If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
You like that? You like that? Do you like that? This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, a second round playoffs New York Knicks podcast. I am EJ Stewart, joined by Tommy Beer. We have so much to discuss on this lovely Thursday morning that we record because the Knicks are headed to the Eastern Conference semifinals. They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland in 5 games. Knicks in 5. The prophecy was fulfilled. Shout out to our producer, Jimmy Jackson, who posted that as the title for one of our other podcasts after the game, I think 2 or 3 or 4. The prophecy was fulfilled. The Knicks win in 5. They move on to the next round. So we will talk about how the Knicks got this win, what it means for the franchise now that they have gotten to the second round of the playoffs for the first time since 2013. And we'll talk about just what also kind of just wrapping a bow on this series as well, and just kind of what we saw and what surprised us. It should be an interesting discussion on that. We have to talk about one of the only negatives that came out of this win for the Knicks, Julius Randle re-injuring his ankle during this game. So we'll talk about what the latest is on that, how long he could be out, and what the Knicks will do if they do not have Julius Randle for part or some or maybe all of the next round in the playoffs. And we now know who the Knicks are actually going to play in the next round. So this is a very monumental podcast. The Miami Heat beat the Milwaukee Bucks, the number 1 seed team with the best record in the NBA, beat them in Milwaukee to clinch their series in 5 games. So we have Heat, we have Knicks. If you grew up in the 90s or you know anything about those rivalries in the late 90s, you know what that means. This is a big-time rivalry and an important one for Knicks fans and a chance for the Knicks to go to Eastern Conference Finals. So we'll give you a very early preview of that. They will start that series Sunday, Game 1 at Madison Square Garden. So a lot to get to today, Tommy, but today is indeed a good day. How you feeling?
Yo, EJ, it's early in the morning. I know we don't usually record at this time, but I had this weird dream last night that like RJ Barrett outplayed Donovan Mitchell and Mitchell Robinson established himself as like one of the best centers in the NBA, and Jalen Brunson did Jalen Brunson things, and IQ had his game, and like the Knicks won, and then the Heat beat the Bucks in 5. So the Knicks are going to have home court advantage in the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs in a game that starts Sunday at the Garden, and they're going to be playing the Heat. Like, just did that really happen? Like that did happen, right?
It did happen. It's hard to believe because I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. A lot of things happened in the NBA last night that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. It was one of the wildest nights in the NBA, and it seems to be par for the course now with these playoffs. I mean, this has been a really wild couple of days in the NBA first round of the postseason.
And well, the sad part is probably 5% of NBA fans got to see it because it happened that the Bucks game was going on at 12:30 on NBA TV. Yeah. That's a story for another day. Let's talk some Knicks basketball, EJ.
Yeah, I'm still paying for those late finishes, by the way, as we record this podcast on an early Thursday morning. So again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original. You can get these podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service so you get these episodes every time we drop. We drop 3 times a week. This is our final episode until, quite frankly, next week when we have a recap of Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals that we now know will be Knicks versus Heat. This is, again, surreal to say, but make sure you hit that auto download feature to follow the Knicks playoff journey right here with Audacy and WFAN. So let's begin with the Knicks advancing to the Eastern Conference semifinals for the first time since 2013. New York took care of business in Game 5, defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers 106-95. The Knicks took the lead in the first quarter and never relinquished it. It was thanks to a really great team effort, as Tommy mentioned. You had Jalen Brunson leading the Knicks with 23 points. You had RJ Barrett adding 21 points. You had Emmanuel Quickley with a breakout game that Tommy predicted on this podcast earlier this week. He had 19 points. And then the front court. What a performance by the front court. First, Julius Randle, who did get injured, and we will talk about that soon. But bounce back performance for the game for the minutes he played. 13 points, 6 minutes and 16 minutes, 6 assists, I'm sorry, in 16 minutes before he left the game with an injury. He was aggressive. He let the game come to him, and he got everybody involved early. I think he had 5 first quarter assists. So really solid game from Randle until he unfortunately got hurt. And then Obi Toppin steps in, immediately changes the game in the third quarter. He has 12 points off the bench. And I think maybe the most inspiring performance of this game came from Mitchell Robinson. 13 points, 18 rebounds, 11 offensive rebounds alone from Mitchell Robinson. He had some big putbacks. He created some second chance opportunities late in the fourth quarter that helped milk the clock. He was essential to the Knicks sealing this win. So for the Cavs, they are eliminated from the playoffs in 5 games. The Cavs, which I learned last night from inside the NBA, Ernie Johnson had the stat. The Cavs have not won a playoff series without LeBron James since 1993. A really astonishing stat. I know they've been to the finals and won a championship, so it's not like they've had all pain during that time, but it's still crazy to think that a franchise minus one player has not won a series since I was 2 years old. So that is where the Cavs are as they head into this offseason. Donovan Mitchell finished this game with 28 points. Darius Garland finished this game with 21 in the loss. So I'll start here, Tommy. How were the Knicks able to close out Cleveland in the fashion that they did?
Oh, man, where to start? You talked about Jalen Brunson. Quite frankly, he was the best player in the series. We talked about it often, and it's common NBA knowledge. The team with the best player often wins. That was the case in this series. It's funny, just before we get into all this stuff, I thought, like, of all the happy fan bases, Knicks and the Heat, obviously, and everything going on in the NBA, like, Donovan Mitchell should be really happy that the Bucks lost last night, and Giannis conversation, and there's so much to talk about that we like. That if this had happened like on a Tuesday and there weren't many other storylines, like, there's not going to be a lot of rehashing of the trade. Everybody that bashed the Knicks for not trading for Donovan Mitchell, but that should be said, and we'll have that conversation at some point. But suffice it to say, and looping that in, RJ Barrett outplayed Donovan Mitchell the final 3 games of this series. Can't say enough about RJ. Really changed the calculus of this team when he plays at that level. Incredible to think that after he struggled as bad as he played over the second half of the season, and really the most of the regular season in general, and then as poorly as he played in games 1 and 2, for RJ Barrett to bounce back and have the 3 best games of his NBA career in the 3 most important games of the Knicks season and his career, respectively, a testament to that kid's heart and guts. You didn't even mention Obi Toppin. That's your boy. Comes in the most important quarter of his entire season, maybe of his entire career. Closeout game on the road. The player that started ahead of him since he arrived in New York, injured and out. Knicks fans nervous. Huge 12, knocks down a 3, gets to the basket, rebounds the basketball, inspired performance, incredible, gut check game from Obi. Huge credit to him as well. Josh Hart, what can you say about this guy? Everything he does.
47 minutes in this one.
He might be the best conditioned athlete in the sport, and that's not hyperbole. Strength, agility, endurance, everything you could want. He is the quintessential New York Knick. He has been the key component that kind of unlocked everything that we're seeing here. But I think it's important to start with, because we probably haven't given him as many flowers as we should have, Mitchell Robinson. He dominated this series. He literally embarrassed Jared Allen. 18, not only 18 rebounds, 11 on the offensive boards. Mitchell Robinson had more offensive rebounds than Jared Allen and Evan Mobley had defensive rebounds combined. That's how you sun people. Like, he literally embarrassed that front court, dominated them in a way that they didn't look prepared for. The thing that I kind of took away right from the start, I just had a feeling that this wasn't going to be the Cavs night. One, the arena was dead. I couldn't believe how quiet that arena was. And the other thing was, it looked like the Cavs front court in particular just had enough of getting bullied and beaten and physically dominated that they just waved the white flag and said, I don't want anymore. Like, I don't want to get back on the plane. I don't want to have to deal with Julius Randle going through my chest. I don't want to have to deal with Mitchell Robinson jumping over the top of me and dunking on my brain. Like, I just, if we lose, I'm okay with it and that was a really, really bad sign. I got that sense early on. And like, that's kind of the overarching theme, I thought. And a lot of it has to do with the front court, just the physicality of the Knicks overpowered Cleveland, and the series wasn't as close as like 5 games. This game wasn't as close, which is shocking to say, because we all thought if the Knicks win, it'll probably be in 7. But just an incredible statement from the Knicks, and there's reason to be really optimistic if you're a Knicks fan right now.
Yeah, we'll hear from some Knicks here, but you mentioned the physicality and the physical dominance that the Knicks had, and especially in the front court in this series. JB Bickerstaff agrees with Tommy that was the difference in this series.
I mean, it's the physicality. I think that's, when you look at even tonight, what they were trying to do, in that first half, it was just put your head down and go to your spot. Right, that forced you into help, and now that was more kickouts, that was offensive rebounds. I also think, give them credit for sure. I thought, Jalen Brunson obviously had a masterful series. Their individual guys played to their strengths and knew how they needed to help. That experience matters. The experience that those guys have gained, Josh Hart and those guys, like, that experience and understanding of who they are and how they help when things are tough and, gritty, so give them a ton of credit for it. But, when you lose the rebounding battle in every game that you lose, and it's not from a lack of effort, that's when the physicality comes into play.
So they're Bickerstaff right there saying it, like, if we lose the rebound battle every game, we're not the more physical team. And if you lose every game, then that's kind of how you lose your series. So I agree. I think that this was, as I tweeted last night, I feel like I'm going to tell my kids about the series with Mitchell Robinson completely dominated Jared Allen. A lot of Knicks fans who've been through some lean years, and one of the arguments we had to latch onto because there wasn't much talk about was that Mitchell Robinson was the best young center in New York, not Jared Allen at the time playing for the Brooklyn Nets, and the Nets were seen as this great young nucleus. I think I saw several people pulling back those tweets. I'm like, wow, a lot of receipts are being pulled. We're talking about the Mitchell Robinson, Jared Allen rivalry that was only on the internet and only between Knicks and Nets Twitter at a very weird time for both of those organizations. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think that Mitchell Robinson was absolutely phenomenal. And I think you're right. I think that it was almost like there were a lot of, I think, football analogies I could use for this game. One, on Mitchell Robinson, it was like, trying to tackle Derrick Henry. Maybe you do a decent job for a couple quarters or even 3 quarters, but after a certain point, when you see a guy who's just so relentless, just going after every ball and just push you around and bullying you around, at a certain point, you're going to let go of the rope. And when you combine that, and then you got Josh Hart flying around also, you got to try to handle him. And those guards got to try to follow him. It was just too much for Cleveland. And it really ended up being the focal point. A lot of the Cavs writers who were following this series said the one thing they worried about was the rebounding. And it ended up being probably the difference in this series. The other thing I thought that was crazy to me was that third quarter. Randle gets hurt. He's out of the game. They start the second half with Obi Toppin. And the Knicks actually end up expanding their lead. And one of the things I noticed, and I'm starting to see from this team, and I think it's trouble for opposing teams, is the difference in how the Knicks play when Randle is out there as a starter compared to when Obi is out there as a starter is night and day. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's better or worse, but I think for the Cavs, it was like a shell shock to like start that second half with Obi Toppin and then have the Knicks make it a track meet. The first half, the Knicks were scoring the ball efficiently. They scored like 61 points, but they were still playing relatively in the half court. They were pushing when they can. But we know how Randle plays. He's more of a half court kind of player. Then they start the second half, and the ball is zipping around. They're flying up and down. Obi's leaking out for breakaway dunks. And now you blink and they're down 16. Like, it's like when you're playing in the NFL or in college or any football, and you're used to playing, a pro-style team, and then at halftime they changed the quarterback, and now they're running like the spread, and you're like, whoa, we didn't anticipate this, we weren't prepared for this. How do we adjust here? And the Cavs they took too long to adjust to how the Knicks were playing. They were playing a completely different brand of basketball in that third quarter, and it ended up costing this game. I think that the Cavs probably thought, okay, Randle out, we're going to find a way to sneak our way back in here, and they tried a couple of times, but that start to the third quarter, which Obi scored all the points. He scored like, I think, 7 or 8 points in a row. That ended up kind of really, putting the game away. Cleveland will creep back in, but they couldn't get close enough to really make it interesting.
Agreed. I thought that start of the third quarter was huge because if there was any, Cavs could latch on to the whole, okay, Randall's, this is that kind of changes, because there was one moment when there's a big swing in the series. Maybe this is it. We'll go on a run here. But yes, it didn't have it. And using to further your football analogy, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Donovan Mitchell could not get on track, and that the primary reason for that was Josh Hart. He's talking about how he envisions himself as a linebacker. Could have played football, and that's what he did. He just didn't give Donovan Mitchell any breathing room. The shots that the Cavs had to make were difficult. IQ tremendous defensively when he came in on Darius Garland. Darius Garland played well, but had to make difficult shots. And the other thing was just the depth. The Knicks' depth, despite being down 2 starters, had better depth. The Cavs had to turn to Lamar Stevens. I mean, it was desperate times. And a lot of that, again, has to do with the fact when you trade multiple young assets and draft picks, and so you don't have draft capital to make a trade at the deadline for one player, the upside is you get a player that can score 38 points in a game, one game. The downside is when you need that depth over the course of a long playoff series, you likely don't have it unless you get, you hit a couple lottery tickets at the end of the roster, and the Cavs certainly have not done that. Even though they got decent minutes from Isaac Okoro, it just wasn't enough,
Yeah, and that JB Bickerstaff's coaching in this playoff series was not great to say the least.
I said Cavs, Donovan Mitchell should be happy that the Bucks lost. JB Bickerstaff should be happy that the Bucks lost as well, because Coach Bud probably coached his last game in Milwaukee last night. That was a disaster. And because of that, JB will probably fly under the radar, but he got thoroughly outcoached by Tibbs this year. He did a terrible job.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing. I mean, as soon as I saw him, I put in lineups out there that had Osman and Okoro and Danny Green playing at the same time. I was like, I mean, is he waving the white flag? Like, does he think that this is like a December regular season game? And ironically, that lineup actually didn't play that terrible, but almost the principle in the matter was just like, how do you put a lineup out there with those guys, 3 guys who are essentially non-threats offensively, at least with the ball in their hands, and any kind of defense on them? And you have 2 of your best players, 3 best scorers on the bench in a game where you're down. Like I could not fathom what he was doing on that other side. So, and then he throw in Lamar Stevens late because they're just now searching for answers. I mean, he did not have a good series. So, he and the rest of the Cavs will go home. A difficult end for them. Before we get to the Randle injury, I really feel like the Knicks offense really turned a corner. Really probably since game 4, and that carried into game 5. Particularly, this was, I think, their best offensive performance. I don't know if this was the most points they scored, but I think given how they got finally what we were talking about really in the last episode, like a game where a lot of other players were able to support Jalen Brunson. It wasn't just one guy. Like these games, it's kind of been one guy or maybe 1 and 1.5. Maybe the other guy gets like 15, the other guy gets 20. Like this was a game where you saw the Knicks why they were one of the most efficient offensive teams in the NBA. Barrett quickly having that breakout game. Obi Toppin comes off the bench. Randle looked like he was going to break through, which is so frustrating that now he didn't get hurt. And then Mitchell Robinson adds 13 points with those 18 rebounds. Do you feel like the Knicks offense has turned a corner in this postseason, given what you saw on Wednesday night?
Of all the crazy, unpredictable, like unbelievable things, like imagine I told you before the series, Knicks win in 5. Then I tell you that the Knicks win game 5 in a closeout game in Cleveland, in which, in the second half, Julius Randle scores 0 points because he's hurt. Jalen Brunson goes 2 of 11. This is maybe the worst half he's played, of the series. and the Knicks still outscore the Cavs in that second half to win Game 5 in a closeout game in Cleveland. It really is remarkable. And again, a lot of that has to do with RJ Barrett, again, tremendous, and just the all around, the versatility. Emmanuel quickly. Again, he stepped up, and Obi Toppin was the Knicks' leading scorer in the second half. Yes, to your point, the change of pace that picks up Hart and Obi are a perfect combination alongside each other, looking to gun outlet passes to each other consistently. That was one of the things. How are the Knicks going to score against this top-ranked Cleveland defense? One of the ways was take care of the basketball. Just 10 turnovers last night. We've talked about the rebound advantage. Another secret sauce thing is the Knicks taking care of the basketball. Again, just 10 turnovers. And the other thing that that they took advantage of in the series was getting easy buckets before Cleveland was able to set. A lot of that has to do with Josh Hart. Every time the Knicks got a turnover this entire series, they looked for Josh Hart wherever he was. Here, you go and figure it out. Anytime they got a long rebound, Josh Hart and push the pace. And it's just kind of contagious. And Obi obviously fed into it. That's, we'll see. We'll talk about Randle next. We'll see how he comes back. But even when Brunson struggles, Hart is kind of a piece that unlocks so much. IQ, can step in and step up. Obi presents a different dynamic. Hartenstein, a versatile offensive player. Mitch Robb crashing the offensive glass. 11 offensive rebounds by one player. I mean, that's 11 possessions. It's huge in a game. And it'll be even more important in the Miami series when the scores are even, because Miami struggles offensively as well. So just a lot to like. This game is important for a number of specs, but instead of having to play Game 6 at home with a gimpy Randle and/or no Randle, now you buy yourself 4 extra days of rest, and you have Game 1 instead of a Game 6. So, it really, really impressive all-around victory from the Knicks.
It definitely was. Before we get to Randle, I will give Tom Tiller the final word on kind of what this win means for the franchise and what this win means for the city.
I think, and I've said this many times, that the tradition of the Knicks, what it means not only to the city but the league, and we have what I feel are the best fans in the world. We have the best city in the world, the best arena in the world, and I think that the way this team plays, it resonates with all our fans. They play hard, they play smart, and they play together. And I think if you do that in New York, it's always recognized. So it's good. There's still a lot of work to be done. We have a lot of areas to improve upon. So we're looking forward to the next challenge.
Knicks move on to win that series. They now go on to the Eastern Conference semifinals. So let's quickly talk about Randle. He was unable to finish Game 5 with coming down on Karis LeVert's foot, re-aggravating an ankle injury that sidelined him for the final 2+ weeks of the regular season. Randle had trouble getting off the floor before eventually limping to the locker room under his own power. He would come out at halftime or after halftime to watch the second half of the game, but he watched it essentially from the stands. He wasn't even on the bench. Obi Toppin at the second half played great, provided the Knicks a spark. After the game, Thibodeau said that it was premature to kind of prognosticate what Randle's situation will be moving forward, but that he'll be reevaluated sometime Thursday, which is the day we're recording this podcast. So, one, how can the Knicks, in your eyes, Tommy, adjust to Randle possibly being out? And how many games can they afford him to not play if they want to advance past the Heat?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, the fact that he came back on the court, good sign. They kind of showed him, doing some calf raises, during timeouts and stuff like that. So just the fact that he felt comfortable enough, they didn't need to immediately, air cast it or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
When he first went down,
exactly.
When he first went down, it looked scary. It looked like he was scared. He looked to the bench immediately. It just looked very familiar to the injury that cost him 5 games. I'm sure he was initially very concerned. It looked like he was a little more comfortable. He was able to walk off the floor under his own power, obviously limping. The other thing is Ian Begley of SNY did report that Randle was walking cautiously. But according to league sources, the early impression is the sprain is not as severe as Randle's prior ankle ailment. So that kind of, confirms the eye test. Who knows? we'll see how. Obviously, it depends on it. He's going to be getting therapy 23 at 24 hours a day. For the next 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever the case might be. We'll see how his ankle responds. Again, this is the same ankle. They got to be careful with it. They may err on the side of caution. One thing to keep in mind: the schedule is set. Sunday, game 1. Do they have the time yet? I saw 1 o'clock.
I didn't see. I didn't see the time when it first happened. But I'm assuming it'll be 1. That's usually when they start those game ones.
I assume it'll be
7 later in the afternoon or evening.
Agreed. I assume that it'll either be 1 or 3:30. But they'll
Yeah.
probably have the West Coast game at 3:30. So I assume it'll be 1 o'clock on Sunday at the Garden. And folks, the Garden will be very loud.
Oh my God.
So then you have the game Tuesday, but then you don't play again. I believe the
1
following
o'clock, by the way, the official time.
Okay, good. And then the next game is Saturday. Is that correct? It goes from Tuesday to Saturday, or is it Tuesday to Friday?
What for
game 3?
3? Let me see. I have it right here. So the Knicks, they'll play Sunday, Tuesday, and then Saturday. Exactly.
Saturday. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind as well. If you hold them out till Saturday, that's a good 10 days of full 9 days of full rest and recuperation. It sounds like he could probably play in game 1. Do they let him suit up in game 1? I guess we'll get a feel after practice on Friday and Saturday, etc. But those are some kind of the options. If it was more severe, given what you can get from Obi, keeping him out that full week might make some sense based on the gap between games 2 and 3. So something to keep in mind. We'll see how it plays out. As far as the X's and O's, should he not be able to play, obviously Obi, take center stage. Yeah. There's a little bit of a different offensive field. We talked about in the first segment. Push that pace a little more. Get Obi some easy buckets in transition. Get Obi some 3-pointers. Also have him create a little bit more. Going to the basket. We've seen a couple times this series now. We put the ball on the floor, get to the rim. Would like to see that a little more. And then you're just going to have to rely a little bit more heavily on your other guys, the Brunsons, the Barretts, Harts, IQs, etc. So we'll see how that plays itself out. The other thing I just kind of thought of randomly, Sims has not been available. Maybe does he get some minutes if Randle's he could give you a good 6 minutes against Bam at some point just to kind of wear him down a little bit. So we'll see how that plays out, but something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that Sims part is a good point, because I didn't even know he was like not available to this series, and then it was like, oh, he's got a shoulder injury, he's not even suited up. So yeah, that will be interesting to see if he ends up getting some time here. So it's so weird because I think we came into this postseason with Randle being a question mark and feeling like, man, Knicks, they will have a really tough time if Randle can't play in the series against Cleveland. He did play in this series. He didn't play particularly well for the majority of the series, and the Knicks still won in 5 games. The Heat are a different animal than the Cavs, especially when it comes to dealing with physicality. They will be way more equipped than the Cavs were. So there's a part of me that says, okay, Randle can't play. This feels like it would still be tough. But like I said in the last segment, like the Knicks play so different when Obi Toppin's out there. And at a certain point, I got to start believing what my eyes are telling me, that Obi Toppin can go out there and give you similar production to what Julius Randle can give you if he plays the kind of minutes. Maybe he won't rebound as well. And he has some defensive lapses in that third quarter that were annoying. But and like Randle doesn't have defensive lapses, but there's some lapses that happen like because he's just not focused. Where Randle sometimes I think if he kicks his spots when he's going to defend. So it's not like it's just like you're getting a same all NBA caliber player. But I just don't know if I can say, oh, the Knicks are going to be in this like disastrous situation if Randle has to miss some games. I got to be honest. I will say, I think the fact that the Heat won't have Hero is an important factor in this as well when it comes to exactly how many points do you need to score to beat the Miami Heat. The Heat offense looked really good against the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks have a great defense. I don't know what happened to the Bucks, and we'll talk about them in a second. But I would think that this is going to be, I agree, kind of a low scoring kind of series. So I think the Knicks may be able to survive missing Randle for a couple of games if they have to. They might be in a weird position where they might need to try to see, hey, we can split these first 2 games in Miami if Randle can't play these first 2 games. And then say, okay, you don't want to have a split, but then Randle comes back for game 3 and game 4. He's okay, now we got to get the split in Miami, Randle playing. I think they feel good about their chances in that regard. They are the higher seed.
I will say this in regards to Obi specifically before we move on to the other matchups and whatnot. The Heat starting Kevin Love at power forward. First of all, you think that Cavs could have used Kevin Love in this
If
after
they could
letting
have,
him
he had
go?
like 11, 12 rebounds last night. Yeah,
15 and 12.
definitely. Yeah,
I will say, but Kevin Love is the type of player Obi can guard, perimeter based. Kevin Love
Yep.
is not, pounding you, taking it back to the basket and driving past you.
Right.
He's hitting spot up threes off space,
Yeah.
off Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry kickouts, etc. So it's not like it's Pascal Siakam who could score 40 on Obi's head and really, take advantage of Obi's defensive deficiencies. Love's a guy that's going to look to draw fouls draw charges on one end of the floor and then shoot threes from the corner and the wings on the other end of the floor. So Obi can stay attached to perimeter players. So that works to the Knicks' advantage as well. Not having obviously Love's not a focal point of the Heat offense, especially in the way that he does score. He contributes offensively, but it's more from the perimeter.
Yeah, no, exactly. And boy, you talk about Kevin Love and his impact in that Heat series and how he played against the Bucks and the Cavs not being able to rebound. You do kind of wonder, man, maybe the Cavs could have used him. But you're right. I think that's a good matchup for the Knicks with Kevin Love playing so many minutes. Not as athletic as well. So knowing, unless maybe they put Bam on Obi. Now this is where it gets fun. Now you're talking about how teams miss a match. But in theory, if they do say, Bam's going to deal with Mitchell Robinson on the glass, and then you have Love on Obi Toppin, that may end up being actually maybe even bigger mismatch than even Randle, because Love's not going to run up and down the floor with Obi.
Yeah, you want to put Obi in pick and roll action and in screen action. Try to get Kevin Love moving. They actually did run some 5-4 Mitchell Robinson Obi pick and rolls top of the key against the Cavs. I'd love to see that. Should Randle not be available, or even if he is, if those two share the floor together, or Hartenstein, because if Love is trying to guard Obi, you want to use your agility, athleticism to your advantage, because that's where Love has a major disadvantage.
Yeah. Overall, the Knicks, it would be great if they can get Randle back healthy. I would feel like they would need him. But today, I can't say that they can't advance without him. I cannot say that after what I've seen, because all the narrative after what I saw last season. Remember, I'm not going back to last season, way Obi finished the season. It was, end of the season, teams are tanking. You can't take that. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Basketball is basketball. But okay, fine. Then the end of this season, same thing happens. Now Knicks are trying to clinch a playoff spot, finish the season strong. And it was the same thing. It's still end of the season, even though the Knicks games mattered. Still end of the season. Other teams are tanking. So I'm like, okay, fine. Now I've seen the playoffs. Obi Toppin, the minutes he plays when Randle was playing and struggling, he helped carry the Knicks past the series. Then in this game where Randle gets hurt and then he dominates the third quarter. First of all, I think Thibodeau should have put him back in. I thought that was a minor mistake in that fourth quarter, especially when the Knicks were struggling offensively. But he plays the way he did in that third quarter in a playoff game against a team that's facing elimination, and there's no excuses anymore. I expect Obi Toppin to play well if he has to start for Randle. I don't think that there's this huge drop off.
The other thing it's really important to note is Randle played really well in that first half. It was great to see aggressive driving through people's dress. Had 5 assists like in the first 9 minutes. Really played smart, played well. Even though his shot wasn't dropping, contributed significantly. That being said, the first 4 games he was bad. He was averaging 14.8 points, slashing 32, 26, 64, and had 4 more turnovers than assists. And I did look up the numbers actually coming into game 5 on Tuesday. I wrote about it. According to Basketball Reference, over 40 years, 898 players have attempted at least 100 field goals in their postseason career. Of those 898 players, Randle has the lowest cumulative field goal percentage. The only other guy shooting below 31% for their postseason careers, 9 games for Randle, are Lindsey Hunter and Chris Duhon. So Randle was not an efficient offensive player and was not, wasn't like he was a key to the Knicks getting to a 3-1 lead. So Obi likely wouldn't play worse, would be more efficient offensively. You assume Randle's going to bounce back. You saw him bounce back in the first half of game 5. And again, they have a better chance to beat the Heat if a fully healthy Julius Randle. But I agree with you. The Knicks can still win the series if Randle doesn't play or misses the first 2 games, etc.
Yeah. So let's get to this Heat series before we get out of here. So Again, we know who the Knicks will be playing in the next round of the playoffs. The Miami Heat became just the sixth team in NBA history to beat a number one seed in the first round of the playoffs. The Heat beat the Bucks in overtime, 128-126, overcome a 16-point fourth quarter deficit. The Heat were able to send the game into overtime thanks to a Jimmy Butler circus layup out of a side out of bounds play. They were then able to hang on in overtime despite losing Bam Adebayo, Kevin Love, and Kyle Lowry to foul trouble. All three guys fouled out. Jimmy Butler out there by himself still found a way to beat the Milwaukee Bucks at full strength. Butler finished the game with 42 points. So that is now the matchup. Knicks Heat. Knicks won the season series 3-1. Each game was decided by single digits. Several of these games decided by the last possession. 2 games, just 2 points were the difference in two of the Knicks wins in this season series. The Heat will come in to this series without Tyler Hero. He broke his hand. They also won't have Victor Oladipo. Very unfortunate injury, him tearing his patella tendon. He's had some knee problems. I'm actually a little worried this might be the end of his career. So shout out to Victor Oladipo. He's had a great run as an NBA player. So early thoughts on this Knicks Heat matchup in terms of key components, key matchups. What are you looking at when you see these two teams now officially set to square off Sunday, game 1?
I think my question is, what happened in the first round series? Was it the Bucks and just falling apart? And obviously, Giannis not playing for a significant portion, but he did come back. They were 0-3 in the games he played. The Heat were the worst offensive team in the NBA during the regular season. They were the second best. They are the second best offensive team in the postseason, averaging 119 points per 100 possessions, and it's an astonishingly high number, better than the Nuggets, behind only the Phoenix Suns. Just scoring the ball at will. Hero not being in the game, you think that would slow them down or hurt them already an offensively struggling team, but they just move the ball so crisply. We're going to talk about Spo plenty over the next 2 weeks. Probably the best X's and O's coach in the sport. Badly outcoached Bud in that series. So those are the things we'll talk about. The thing that I actually woke up thinking about randomly, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, EJ.
Yeah.
Do you start Quentin Grimes if he's healthy enough to return, or do you leave Josh Hart in the lineup? My initial thinking is I'm going to leave Hart in the starting lineup primarily because of this matchup. I'm going to match Josh Hart's minutes with Jimmy Butler's minutes for the next 7 games, 48 minutes a night, no matter how often they have to play. Hart's my heart and my soul of this team. The Bucks have really good defenders. Drew Holiday's one of the best of defensive player of the year candidate every year he's healthy. Giannis has won defensive player of the year. Brook Lopez was a finalist for defensive player this year. The thing they don't have is a wing, and Jimmy Butler abused them down the stretch for the final few games of the series. The Knicks have Josh Hart. And that is, Josh Hart is going to go from guarding Donovan Mitchell. Tibbs kind of matched up his minutes. He took Hart out for the only minute he rested was essentially the only couple minutes Mitchell was out. I could see him doing the same. I feel confident in throwing Grimes at him for a few minutes here and there. If Hart gets into foul trouble or he wears down, because Grimes is that good of and physical a defender. But Josh Hart may be ideally suited as any player in the league. Because nobody's stopping playoff Jimmy when he's playoff Jimmy.
Oh yeah,
and he's been a monster. So all credit to him. He's a Nick nightmare right now. But if anybody can do it, Josh Hart's going to be up to the challenge. He's going to embrace the challenge. So that's something that I think. But it'll be very interesting to see what Tibbs does there. Yeah,
the Hart starting question is going to be an interesting one. I mean, I feel like it's been a kind of elephant in the room since he got here.
Yeah.
I feel like. I think you probably have to start him because of how the heat of Jimmy's on right now, and to feel like I don't want to hit seat. I want to give myself the best chance in game 1 and how it starts to not let him get going, because there's probably time he will get going. I cannot let it be in game 1, and he goes on a 6-7 game heater. So I think because of that, you say Josh Hart getting in his chest the minute that tip goes off, and we're gonna go. I do worry about what that means for Quentin Grimes. I think it's somewhat unpredictable. Like, there was a fear I had that, like, if you move Quentin to the bench, maybe that hurts his confidence. Maybe he doesn't now give you the offensive output that you expect from him. Quite frankly, in the playoffs, he's giving you 0 offensive output.
Exactly.
I don't know if you're going from 0 to 0. Does defensive effort, he's always going to give you hustle. So He's not giving you nothing. He's always going to be worth some minutes out there. So I think at this point, I think I would agree. I think I would start Josh Hart. He that's the way he's shooting the ball too. He's shooting the ball better than Quentin Grimes, quite frankly. So yeah, I think that's probably the move they're going to have to go with. And I think that matchup between Jimmy Butler and Josh Hart will probably decide the series, because this is not, again, going to be a series where there's going to be a lot of offense. I think that these are going to be defensive struggles. And I expect Jalen Brunson to play well. I don't, Gabe Vincent, good defender, but Brunson's had his way with him in this regular season. I don't expect that to change. I think if the Knicks can just keep Jimmy Butler closer to his averages, don't let him have, 2 or 3 40, 50-point games like he had against the Bucks, I think that's how the Knicks win the series.
Agreed. And the other thing with Grimes is he wasn't getting field goal attempts when he was on that, alongside Brunson and Randle and Barrett. So maybe move it to the second unit. Might him get some more looks. See how if he can develop some chemistry with IQ and Hartenstein and Obi, running up and down the floor if Randall's healthy. So those are some of the things I think that why it makes sense. Again, we got to see if he's healthy. We still don't know if he's he obviously missed the last couple games of the Cleveland series. We should, the latest report was he was out of his sling, so it looks like he's trending in the right direction. So hopefully, ideally, hope he's healthy, so you have that option. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about the ego, pride stuff with Grimes. I think he'll understand that Hart was a key component, to winning the series. He's a young kid. He has to earn his minutes, etc. And I think that might be a way to slow him back. But yeah, I agree with you. Even like somebody says, let Grimes get out there, and you don't want to, mess up the chemistry the starters had. Like that first 6 minutes might decide the first game. And like, again, this is the time of year where you don't play around. Don't let Jimmy get hot. If he makes shots, make them contested shots, because he's capable again of going on one of those heaters that they listen. He carried the Heat to the finals previously on a heater, so it's not.
Yeah. Knicks don't want to. They will see playoff Jimmy at some point in this series.
Yes.
The important thing is to try to limit how many times this persona makes an appearance. You limit it to a half, limit it to one game. What it can't happen is what happened in the Milwaukee series, where essentially there were like 3 playoff Jimmy games, and that's why the Heat are now in the next round. The Bucks are going home. I think the Knicks are better equipped to face this team if we're going on a prediction, because we kind of have to give one. This is the last episode we have until game 1 is finished. I think the Knicks will win this series. I think Randle will come back and play some factor. I don't know if he plays the first 2 games, but I think the Knicks win this series in 6. I've thought since every time I've seen these teams play, the Knicks look like the better team. The one game the Heat won, it felt like the Knicks played terrible in the second half. Like I if the Knicks lost this series, I'm not gonna say I'd be shot for an animal in the playoffs. I just don't know, considering some of the injuries they have, some of the long minutes some of these other guys are playing. I just think the Knicks' depth will eventually get the better of them. And I think the fact that the Heat may be riding a little bit of a high. I know that they have big aspirations despite being an 8 seed, but you go up against the Bucks, the team that have knocked you out the playoffs not that long ago. They got swept by the Bucks a couple of years ago. Like, this is a matchup that always is something that they get up for. And while us Knicks Heat, it is a rivalry, and I think that Tom Thibodeau will be able to explain that to those guys. We'll see if Spoelstra can get that kind of motivation into the Heat. He was, he's been around Pat Riley. He knows the history as well. But I just think that this is going to be a series where the depth gets the better of them and the Knicks win in 6 games.
Agreed. I got the Knicks winning the series as well. I think it probably could go 7. I think game 1's really important. The Heat coming off, as you mentioned, coming off a high, not just beating the number 1 seed, but the way they did it, the incredible comeback in game 4, the unbelievable comeback in game 5, the Jimmy Butler post route at the rim to send it into overtime and then win it overtime. So if you could jump on the Heat right from the start, Garden's going to be insane Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Before they kind of get their footing and prepare, for this next series, but Spo will have some wrinkles, etc. It's really important to get that game 1 and kind of set the tone and say, hey, this is not the Bucks team you just played. We're here. We're for real. And obviously just having a 1-game advantage is huge. And you got to win your home games in the postseason. So I think that'll go a long way towards setting the tone. And yeah, just looking at the series as a whole, when the Heat go to their bench and the Knicks go to the bench, we talked about it. The huge advantage, especially if you have a healthy Grimes, with IQ and Hardenstein and just everything that the second unit can bring, and kind of maintain that level. The Heat basically have some bench unit guys in their starting lineup. So I just don't see the Heat being able to deal with the Knicks constantly leaning on them, jabbing, punching them. And we know how physical New York's going to play. I don't think the Heat are going to be able to withstand that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Heat have it's testament to how great Coach Eric Spoelstra is, a testament to how great player Jimmy Butler is, that they were able to do what they did to the Bucks. I just think as the playoffs go on, your wars show more and more. I think the Bucks, in their inability to kind of get out of their own way in this series, allowed the Heat to kind of hide a lot of their warts. I think it's crazy I'm gonna say it. I think there's going to be a difference in coaching level from Coach Bud to Tom Thibodeau. I mean, I know Bud has a championship, but I mean, that guy is going into the offseason and maybe into a new job with 3 timeouts in his pocket. I mean, not call a timeout after Jimmy Butler ties a game with 0.9 seconds left to advance the ball and essentially just punt to overtime. Incredible. And then to watch Grayson Allen drill the clock out in overtime with 2 timeouts in your pocket, it's dumbfounding. It's dumbfounding, and I criticize Thibodeau a lot. Last night was a night where I was thankful Tom Thibodeau was Knicks head coach. And those are words I don't know if I thought I'd ever say, at least not since he won Coach of the Year. I said that watching both of those games, both the Knicks winning and then watching what Coach Bud did, because that was malpractice at the highest order. So the coaching match will be important. I think the Knicks will be prepared, and it should be a good series. Knicks Heat, it's my favorite rivalry in the NBA. I know it's been dormant, but you can't tell me that those 4 years in a row those two teams played every single playoffs was not some of the most intense basketball. Maybe not the prettiest or the most well played, but the most intense and physical basketball that you've ever seen. So I'm excited to get it reignited.
Listen, if you're a script writer and if you're Hollywood and you're looking for a Knick fan kind of script, it's Donovan Mitchell, embarrass him and beat up the Cavs in the first round. Riley next on the checklist, knock him out in round 2, and then see whether it's Philly or Boston. But there's a lot of 99 vibes, kind of hanging here, and I thought Mitchell Robinson's play reminded me of Marcus Camby during that 99 run. So we'll see. It'll definitely be interesting and exciting and give us plenty to talk about.
It definitely will. But that will do it for this episode of Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original podcast you can get wherever you get podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service to get these episodes every time we drop. We drop 3 times a week. So we'll be back following game 1. We'll be back on Monday to recap game 1, tell you guys how everything went down. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. I didn't mention at the top of the show, but you can find us both on the Audacy Sports channel and the WFAN channel to watch the video podcast of these episodes. So, Tommy, let people know where they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter, and enjoy this weekend, Knick fans.
Yes, definitely enjoy it, Knick fans. You can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you guys once again for checking us out. We'll see you next week. Go Knicks. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest podcast ventures. Links will be in the descriptions. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.